Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast. That's right. We are back once again. And you know what today is? It is Wednesday. Wednesday. What's up? Wednesday is what we've been saying, but what everybody always saying. Mm-hmm. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Wednesday to everybody that is tuning in, no matter where you are listening and or watching from.
You know what I'm saying?
We thank you for tuning in. We hear that the podcast is growing. We are up to, I think, 23 active listeners.
Jordan.
A lot of other listeners follow along later.
Inactive listeners?
Yeah, inactive listeners.
Okay, yeah.
But we've got 23.
Nice.
It's pretty good.
Jesus had a lot of inactive listeners, too.
He did. But
that's a word.
You know, it'll preach, but
it will.
I mean, this is Beyond Sunday, so we've already preached on Sunday, so we're going beyond Sunday.
I see what you did there.
You see what I did there?
And I'm going to follow.
I'm trying. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, this is episode 9 of season 1. Can you believe that, guys? We're 9 episodes in.
9 deep.
9 episodes in.
9.
I mean, we're almost to a dozen.
A good old gospel dozen.
Gospel dozen. You know, the word of the Lord, 12 disciples.
12 tribes.
Oh, okay.
12 tribes.
I would not me being like gospel doesn't. Like what?
Yeah, not baker's dozen.
Why am I thinking food?
Yeah, this guy over here got super hungry all of a sudden right here on the podcast. Yeah. Hey.
Food. Frenches.
Well, today is Wednesday, and we want to shout out who's on the podcast. Speaking of that, it's me, Pastor Jack. We obviously have Pastor Joshua back on the couch. We've got Pastor Troy.
Mustard on that beat, yo.
Mustard French's today, not Dijon, French's Mangrum. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
They didn't have a Dijon mustard shirt, but I heard, I heard the podcast last week, and I heard y'all acknowledging my middle name, being Mustard. And I just had to, I had to pop out and show y'all.
So,
but look, it's not even like Joshua. It's not even regular mustard though. This guy got like that bougie mustard. Yeah. You know, it's like Dijon.
If you know, you know.
Yeah.
If you know, you know.
It's like Grey Poupon.
Grey Poupon.
Dijon.
So funny story. For my whole life, I would argue with people that I was not named after mustard. And then I went to visit my aunt who named me in the hospital, and I had to ask before she went on to be with the Lord. I had to ask. I was like, Auntie. I've been fighting this battle my whole life. Can you just put it on the record? That I was not named after mustard.
Set everybody straight.
That I was not named after mustard.
Yeah.
And she looked at me with the most love and compassion and this endearing smile. She said, "But you were, nephew." She goes, "But it was the fancy mustard."
It was the fancy mustard.
And I'm like,
why'd you have to go get curious?
My head, because you got to know. I sank my head down. My sisters all laughed in there. And I'm like, so I've been telling people I'm not named after mustard for years.
Bro.
30 plus years. I've been fighting this battle. Yeah. And I was wrong. And now I'm fully embracing the mustard.
You're living that mustard life.
Mustard on that beach, yo.
Is this like a shirt you just happen to have? Or did you
know the answer to that question?
I mean, Troy takes serious what the Word of God says, that he is ready in season and out of season.
He took seriously this podcast.
And he takes seriously his seasonings and condiments, apparently.
You ain't wrong, bro.
Do you see what I'm saying?
You ain't wrong.
So not only is this guy about the Himalayan sea salt, but this dude apparently is about the mustard.
Mustard.
You know what I'm saying?
Look, mustard.
Keeping it musty with the mustard.
No,
I put on deodorant. I was trying to rhyme.
I try to, you know what I'm saying? But I get you. I hear you.
Yeah. I was going somewhere with that, but
that's enough mustard content for.
It's a lot of mustard content. I think people know you way better than they ever hoped or anticipated. It's pretty great.
Yeah,
it's pretty great. But I will call attention to something else. I want to say, Josh, you look very nice today.
You do.
Thanks, you got a fresh haircut. I see you.
Fresh fade.
Today is Acknowledge Joshua Day. It is
Honor Joshua Day.
Honor Joshua Day.
But I do think it's important. Hold on. It's important.
He's going to out himself again, and we're trying to set him up for success here.
I tried to do it last week, and you didn't let me.
Yeah. So let's pause. You have a nice shirt on today.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It looks nice.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There is
good material.
There is yet any stains on it.
It's so
That's great.
soft.
That's
Look at that.
good job.
That's nice.
It's on the way.
You have a nice bracelet.
I did
You know what I'm
find
saying?
this bracelet.
It's a legit
Very cool
bracelet.
bracelet.
That's
Mhm.
awesome.
I don't know if it's proper
I
to wear
mean-
bracelets on your right hand though,
Yeah.
or
No.
non-dominant hand.
I don't think it matters. I
Does it
think
matter? Is it
no.
cool? Whatever.
Mm-mm.
Okay,
No,
good,
just,
bro.
just whatever
Noted.
feels right. You
Duly
know.
noted.
But I think you're looking great today,
Thank you,
and
man.
we're glad that
Thank
you're
you.
on the podcast
God bless
today.
you. I am
You
an
know,
out myself.
it's
So
good stuff.
because if I don't do it, like this is for me. Let it not be.
Okay.
It don't even.
I was
this
just
is
trying
for
to
me.
just compliment
I love
your
it, and I
your
thank
your
you.
fancy
Look,
summer
thank
look.
You, thank
I
you,
mean,
thank you, thank
know?
you. But I will,
He's gonna
I will
do it.
do one thing. On my Vans right here, that is paint.
I saw it and I was trying not to say
That
nothing.
I was gonna
paint.
ignore
But I gotta
it.
say, what are those?
That is
I was
paint.
I was gonna
We
look past
were-
it. I was gonna look past the homemade polka dots, bro, but I was just like, I'm not
Homemade
I'm not
polka
gonna go.
dots?
I'm not gonna go there. I'm like, I was gonna look past all that and say, you know what? I just want to bless my brother in Christ today.
Me,
but
I
at the
know
same
I
time,
receive your blessing. Like I think
Yeah.
it's
We're-
twofold. Because one, it keeps me humble and reminds me of just to always just stay grounded.
Stay grounded, yeah.
Feet
Yeah.
to the grind.
Yeah,
Humility.
no, I get you. Yeah,
what I'm
Humility.
saying?
Self-care.
But me and my boy Michael Wissner, that's my homie.
Yeah.
We were painting a room here at church. And I just got impulsive, and I didn't go home and change. I didn't really
You-
feel like doing it, I kind of saw the thought, and
Sure.
was just like, we're just gonna do it right now. And so we went and got a bunch of stuff, and so I painted in my Vans, and Vans
Love that.
are $100, so I'm not trying to
yeah.
spend $100, and so
And now
this'll
you're
do.
marked forever.
I am,
Marked
but
forever,
it really does remind me
you
to
know?
text Michael during the day. It
Yeah.
really
Good.
does.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
my buddy, it's my homie, dude.
Yeah,
It's my best
and
friend.
those shoes will always remind you to keep your feet to the ground because your
They're on
feet
the
are
ground.
super close to coming to the ground.
For
and
sure,
those, I mean,
dude.
those are.
What do you
I mean,
swear? You know.
Jesus is working on me. I'm gonna hold my tongue.
you're gonna hold the tongue. Okay, good. We're gonna hold the tongue. We're just gonna continue to love on Joshua. We're gonna hold our tongue. You know what I'm saying? We'll let our podcast listeners and viewers
Roast the-
make their own assumptions. You know what
Make their
I'm
own
saying?
assumptions,
I'm
yes.
sure they'll come up with some very nice things to say.
No, they've been getting on us for giving them a hard time.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
dude.
It's fine.
And I'm cool
They
with
don't
that.
see the other side of the coin. It's
They
fine.
really don't.
It's okay.
Because I'll be like, it be your own people.
It's okay. It's okay.
It be
It's
your
okay.
own people.
Well, hey y'all, it's summertime. I don't know if that's fully sunk in or not yet, but it is like legit summertime.
It's sunken in
I'm
my
talking
house.
about
My house
like
is hot.
80 degrees, right?
I ain't got no
80
AC.
plus. Yeah, it's well, I'm sorry, man. You know what I mean?
Crack a
But,
window.
When you live in an oldest house as I do, like these windows, you may not want to open them all the way because
Yeah.
if you open them all the way, they
You might
never
not shut
come
them.
back. it might not come back.
It was like it ain't closed.
bro, the window's just gonna
falls
give up.
out.
You know,
open
like,
door after open door.
that window's like, I'm tired of being windowing. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm tired of windowing.
We retired years ago, sir.
Yeah, you're not supposed to touch us. You know, it's good. But hey, it is summertime, and we love all the summer things that are upon us that comes up. We got a lot of great things happening, and so I think with that, now that we've kind of settled into where we're going and know who's here, we also got Pastor Linda in the building once again. Pastor Linda,
Love you, Mom.
Pastor Linda,
Say something.
did y'all hear that?
She a real one.
She
Yep,
did.
I heard it too. I heard
Yep,
it too.
it was
I know
wisdom.
you heard it. That's right.
Wisdom.
That
The
was
decibel
wisdom.
level is slowly increasing.
Dropping
Just,
bars. I love it. I love it. And we got Z on the ones and twos
What's
Yep.
up,
today.
Z? Z in the
making it
broadcast
happen.
room. What's
Mount
up, Bubba?
Zion.
It's good. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. It's good times. It's good times.
Switch
But
them
let's
up.
do some check-ins. Let's see what's going down. Last week on the podcast we switched it up, and it was just Joshua and I had a chance to chop it up because sounds like you got your hands full, Brother Mangrum. What's going down, man? Tell us what's happening. We announced the news.
Yeah.
A new edition.
Yeah.
Get us up to speed on what's going down in the Mangrum household.
Yeah, so on June 10th, you guys know our daughter was born, Eden Beckett Mangrum.
Yeah.
So which was beautiful. I was surprised. We had no idea, boy or girl throughout the entirety of the process. So I had a little bit of fun trolling people on social media, as is my custom. But but yeah, it's been great, man. She's super chill. Like it's really just wonderful to have that experience because my other two, if you've met them, Deacon and Ember, are the opposite of super chill.
You don't say.
They are tohu wabohu.
It's a very biblical term for that.
Yeah. So it's been really nice, but Ashley is doing really well, recovering very well. There was no complications or anything, which is nice and not been our experience with the previous two. She's home, up and around. We took a couple walks up the block. You know, like it's really nice. Deacon and Ember have adjusted really well. Ember's adjusted well to being the big sister, you know, and all of her assertiveness.
Yeah.
She gets to redirect now from her
right.
brother that's older than her that tends to, you know, push back to a tiny one.
Hey.
So
She's the supervising sister.
yes,
You know what I mean?
But Eden is, and she sleeps like a rock, even through all the midst of everything that they're doing. So Ash and I have been able to get, you know, pretty adequate rest,
Nice.
which was a nice surprise. You know, that she sleeps most of the time, so
That's
yeah,
great,
we're able to, you know, we're able to keep a good healthy rhythm. So things have been nice at home, man. We've had, you know, friends and family come visit, just see the baby, and you know, it's always nice catching up with people and not feeling like we're locked in the house. You know,
Love that.
So it's been good. It's been a good week and some change that, you know, adjusting to having the little one home now. So.
That's cool, man. I mean, congratulations to you guys
Thank
again.
you.
So fun to see your family growing. And it's just fun to see, Deacon and Ember being big brother, big sister. You know what I mean? And just loving on Eden. So much fun, man.
Yeah, they crazy though, man.
Yeah. Well, welcome back to the podcast, though, man. I know they're crazy, but
Yeah.
at least you got a little reprieve, you know, as you're hanging out,
you
chopping
know?
it up with us.
Yeah, and you know, able to be at church on Father's Day. You know,
Yeah.
took Deacon and Ember with me, and Ashley was resting at home. You know, like walked up to her parents' house, which is down the street, which is very nice to have that. So yeah, it's been cool. You know,
Love that.
This has not been my experience with the previous two, so it's
Right.
It's a welcome change.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Joshua, what's happening, man? What's going on in Joshua land?
Not too much, man.
Yeah.
Just living, cruising, excited, grateful for the season we're in as a community, and as a church. I shared a little bit last week, but really feeling like just God's just been doing some fresh stuff in me, and have had I think recently, some of my best times of just like friendship and belonging in God's presence recently, just in my like personal life. And so that's been great, just engaging new practices and finding almost just like a spiritual refresh for me. And so that's been really, really nice recently. So other than that, nothing too crazy, ramping up towards summer, excited about what God's doing in our worship arts ministry. So that's been a lot of fun. Hooping, playing basketball, doing my things, normal day-to-day stuff, enjoying. Yeah, pretty easy season right now. We're just chilling. We're just chilling. So,
It's good, man.
yeah,
That's good. Hey, you know, getting ready for summer.
How about you?
You had a pretty monumental day.
Yeah,
Oh, I
dude.
mean, hey, you
Days
know,
back.
it's been a great week. I would say this past Sunday, obviously, got to celebrate Father's Day here
Yeah,
at City
man.
Line Church and with my
And-
family. And in addition to
and-
that, it was my birthday. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
It was
Go
my
shorty.
birthday. So
It's
I
your
love to
birthday.
celebrate my birthday. I love to be able to, it's an honor to be able to serve God on your birthday. You know what I mean? But also, I got to spend time with family. My parents came up from San Diego, and
Yeah, man.
I don't always get a chance to spend a birthday or even a Father's Day with my dad and my mom. So that was really special. But I would say, and all that being special, I mean, today is Wednesday, like you said, and you know what's up with this Wednesday in particular?
Yeah.
Is that this Wednesday is June the 19th.
Yeah.
And on June the 19th, way back when in the year of
1865.
and no, 1999,
What happened on 99?
Linda and I
No.
got married. And so today is our 25th wedding anniversary.
Yo. Hey.
I mean, like silver, man. Like
Quarter
we
a century,
got to
dude.
silver like
You made it.
rapid speed,
Yeah,
bro. Like,
yeah, it
I
feels
can't.
like
I
you
can't.
blink.
I'm like, how are we here? You know what
So
I mean?
you got
Like,
1999.
1999.
What were you doing in
So it was
1999?
I was one.
yeah.
I was-
See, you gotta love that, right?
Yeah.
I just told on myself my age.
Oh, you good, man.
I was
Good.
afraid of the Y2K virus.
The white yeah, that was coming up. You were in a bunker, right? You were trying to get everything all stocked up. Yeah, no, but today is our wedding anniversary. We're 25 years in.
That's dope.
And
That's sick,
I just
dude.
want to give a shout out to my beautiful wife and just say, I love you, and I thank God for you, and I thank God for our family, and that we've been on this journey together for this long, and excited for. Whatever God has next for us as we
25
continue.
years,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah.
That's dope.
So yeah, that's my
That's
check-in
sick,
this
dude.
week, man. It's like it's
dope.
been
Bro,
quite an eventful week.
So we said May was a celebration for you, but like that goes all the way.
It flows into June.
June,
like, out of the overflow of May, we continue to celebrate.
So you got
June,
Father's Day, birthday, and wedding anniversary.
Yeah,
That's tight, man.
I love that. I love that. So so I just want to give that shout out today.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
good.
June is just you though. Like you get, you know what I'm saying? It's all about Jack.
Yeah. June is Jack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just sitting in it and just kind of processing and just kind of being thankful for everything.
That's
So,
dope.
Sure, man.
That's good.
That's dope.
But yeah, man. So enough about us. Let's talk about what we're learning in the community of the church as a whole. I mean, obviously, we're talking about Beyond Sunday, and we're talking about this idea of continuing the conversation. So we've been in this brand new series that we're calling Everyday Dialogue, and the hope is that we just want to really understand better the significance of prayer. How are we praying? How are we engaging God in prayer? And I think one of the things that I wanted to make mention, I think that I don't think it's just for a prayer series, but I really think it's just for us as followers of Jesus, is that oftentimes we make the mistake in following Jesus that we only have things to learn as it relates to following Jesus and nothing to unlearn.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times, even if we've been in church for a long time, or even if we're new to faith, wherever we are on this idea of following Jesus, I do think that there's stuff that we have to assess in our life that maybe we have to unlearn so that we can relearn what Jesus is really teaching us. And so I find it fascinating that when it comes to prayer in the scriptures, we have one of the disciples, or maybe a few of them, even according to the way the text reads, just being fascinated with Jesus's prayer life and the way that he prayed. And their question was, Jesus, would you teach us to pray?
Yeah.
Just like John taught his disciples. And they were referencing John the Baptist, obviously the one who has come to prepare the way for Jesus, who was very clear that I'm not the one that you're looking for. John the Baptist was like, I'm not the Messiah, but the one that you are looking towards, let me point you to him. And so he was teaching them how to pray with an orientation towards this soon coming Messiah.
Definitely.
And now we have Jesus on the scene. He is the Messiah. And his disciples are like, teach us, man. Like, we've known about prayer. We understand prayer. We grew up in a Jewish culture that's filled with all these memorized and rehearsed prayers. But Jesus, none of that seems to compare with the way that you're praying. Like there's a power, there's an authority, there's an overflow, literally, that we see in your life from that time with the Father that I don't know that we've experienced yet in our life. And it's interesting to me. They're like, we want that. We want that above and beyond anything else. We want that. So let's kind of weigh into that a little bit. Let's talk about prayer, this idea of teach us to pray. Have you ever asked anybody that question? Would you teach us to pray, or maybe can you think back, when did you learn to pray? I mean, what was that experience like? For some of us that grew up in church all of our lives, it might be hard to kind of rewind that story. For those that are newer in faith,
I know for me,
different.
And we talked about it when Rhonda was on, that I didn't say teach us how to pray. I didn't ask my mom that. I just told her I didn't know how, and then she offered some insight and advice.
Sure.
But then as I got older, being very churched and seasoned in the church world, we learned this hour of power.
That's what it was called, an hour
it
of
was
power.
An hour of power. You go
The hour of power.
Yeah, man. You go and you contend, and you gotta you pray. From the way I grew up, in tongues, or you pray for a few things
for
in
an
English,
hour.
For an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was this idea that like you had to, it was a prayer life, and you had to, prioritize it, which is fine, but you had to get up early, which works for some people, it doesn't for others. But it was this idea of like, man, it was always like prayer is a struggle.
Sure.
It's a fight. It's a fight against the spiritual resistance and spiritual enemy and these strongholds, which is true. But that was the way it was framed. It was just a struggle and a contending with God.
Right.
And you pray for things, and you tarry, as they say, you tarry, and you wait until you get an answer from God, or you get a resolve, or some sort of resolution through the Holy Spirit. And so that was kind of my framework for prayer for a long time. That's how I approached it. And then in seasons where I didn't feel like I could do that, I just didn't pray.
Well, hold up. Let me ask about that, because I'm hearing you say that, and I'm like, it just feels like when you're talking about that, I want to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just feels like
exhausting.
Exhausting. So let me ask then, so if that was something that was what you were learning in your early on, and this is the way that we pray, is in this way, what was that feeling for you? Like, what was it? Did it feel overwhelming, heavy, or tiring, or exhausting? And then when you felt, if that's the case, like, I mean, what do you do with that?
Yeah. So there are significant stretches of time, be it days, months, weeks, that it just felt overbearing and a lot, and discouraging, to be honest. Where I felt like if I didn't have a certain feeling in prayer, tears or, something like just intense, I feel like I've wasted my time, or I've not done enough, or there's some secret sin, or I'm not, like I'm shaming and beating myself up because I feel like God has got me on ignore because I'm not giving it. I'm not effectual and fervent enough.
Sure,
or I'm not.
sure.
You know what I'm saying? There's something going on that that I'm concealing. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So for a long time, it was very overbearing and overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so they got to points and seasons in life where I just didn't have it in me to do that.
So
I didn't pray.
Just didn't pray.
Like, not anything of any intentionality.
Yeah.
I would just say, hey, God, we good? Cool. And move on. Because I'm like, I just can't do that. 6 in the morning.
I hear that.
An hour of like just struggle.
Right.
And waiting for
So wait,
breakthrough.
hour of power was at 6 in the morning? Is that what you just said?
I would get up. I'd be probably 5:30 and then get to prayer about 6. Pray from 6 to 7 and then move on to my day.
Okay. And Josh, you had a similar experience, or is it like you're like, I'm resonating with that, or?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of at least just sitting in the aspect of feeling discouraged by, like, almost like just very defeated in such a way when you don't feel like you can measure up to what's being modeled of you in prayer.
Sure.
Like when you see the example that's set forth and it doesn't feel like you can quite, like, I identify with that a lot, and I don't know that, at least even until right here in this moment, have I fully even processed some of that. Like, I was just reflecting on my journey, and particularly the aspect of prayer, and I similarly, maybe to you guys as well, came from a church community where prayer was very fervent, and we were diligent and committed. One language that we had used a lot within our community was that God had called our church particularly to be a house of prayer for all nations. Like, that was the desire, that was a call that was given to our founding pastor at the time, and really we kind of felt a burden to help carry that out. And so I think there were very pure moments where that was modeled well for me and what diligent, fervent prayer looked like. But I also think some of it came along, at least from, as a man, kind of came with this barbaric, very masculine approach to prayer that very early on I realized I could not measure up and could not live into.
Wow.
Not necessarily because I didn't think that I was a dude. It wasn't anything like that. It was just more like, these guys are just so like, I think like Solomon's mighty men of God. Like, I don't feel like I can be that. Like, I don't feel like I can quite be what I need to be in this community.
Sure.
But when we see that modeled for us, a lot of my prayer life started to look like just emulating that, whether I felt like it was diligent or not, whether I felt like it was coming out of a place of purity and sincerity. I nonetheless still found myself in that cycle of trying to emulate that. And so very quickly I realized, though, it was not who I was, and I could not pray these. It was almost like it was so much fervency when praying. It was like you would be willing to go stand up on some street corner somewhere with a box holding a Bible, and being willing to pray over anybody who had come by. And not to say that there isn't a certain level of beauty or ministry to be found within that, but I just never felt like I could fully live into that. Yeah. Because maybe it was my childhood and things that I had gone through and experienced as a kid. But I remember receiving a prayer of someone that had prayed over me. It was more like a prophetic word, and our church was a very prophetic church. And I remember and I've told you guys this story years ago, but I remember they prayed over me, and they basically told me, you are not a barbaric Christian. And I remember what that did in me at the time. And I was so, like, I was really, quite honest, I was pretty pissed, because I'm just like, I was literally like, wait, this is contradictory to the thing that I see modeled in me, and yet you just told me that I'll never be that.
Yeah.
And I was so mad at that word at the time, but I realized there was a grace in it, because what she actually said was, God has called you to be a soft spirit and to be tender in your prayer and to be fervent. And God wants to use the poetic nature of your words out of the overflow of your heart, pouring directly into his, and his pouring directly into yours. And so there was something modeled for me. I did the best that I could. When I couldn't do it, I found myself discouraged up until the moment that I realized maybe there's something more to this. And so I'm probably not until the last few years has that really changed for me in a powerful way. But that's a little bit of my context.
Well, I think it's interesting when we talk about those different experiences, because it feels like so over time throughout Christian history, you know what I mean? It feels like if we really kind of trace the idea or the essence of what I feel is Jesus calling us back to in prayer. If we look over time, some of these things that you guys are talking about, some of the things that I feel like I observed or learned, this is what prayer really means. It feels like they're layers that people have put on prayer over the years that for all intents and purposes, maybe was a well-intended idea or a well-intended thought, but those ideas and thoughts became now what is the main thing, you know what I mean? And so they become elevated in a sense that we have to have all these types of experiences or all these types of feelings and emotions for it to feel like it's actually real prayer.
Yeah.
Or even like somebody else's experience that was intentional and impactful for them becomes
Suddenly
prescriptive for everyone else. I'm like, that's just your obedience to what God is calling you to has been effective for you. But now to impose that on other people or to make that the standard by which we all have to model, well, I'm not wired that way and God's not calling me to that. That's what he called you to, and we got to be okay with that.
Yeah, well, that personal standard for like everything that that somebody sets, you know what I mean, or whatever, like that thing that was so formative for us, it does not have to be the overall standard for everybody.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? That, again, what I love about Jesus and what he's doing when the disciples ask for prayer, I feel like he's really getting at the core and the essence of what prayer is really supposed to be and what that's supposed to look like. And so over time, like, again, we put layers on it. We put certain expectations on it. We put certain things that we think are going to happen, you know, in different ways. And what we want to do is just kind of reread this a little bit and kind of think through, like, all right, what might this mean? And so Jesus says in Matthew 6:9-13, in reference to the disciples' question of being taught how to pray, he says, "This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one."
Yep.
Now, in thinking about that and trying to understand that, I feel like oftentimes this is probably not the first time that those that are tuning in have heard that prayer.
Right.
Especially if they heard us talk about it last Sunday. But I think the words of the prayer are so familiar in a sense that we've either read them somewhere, heard them somewhere, saw them in a movie, heard them recited at a funeral, heard them, you know, somewhere. Because oftentimes people take this prayer as a prayer to recite.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think beyond a prayer to recite, I really do think that Jesus was giving us a framework for how to pray.
Yes.
So yes, are these words significant when we recite them? Yes. Do they make us be mindful of the nature of prayer when we read them? Yes. But I think even beyond reciting or reading, this is actually something that is inviting us to a deeper prayer life, something that is more of a framework to follow as we engage
he says,
with the Father.
Right. This is how you should pray.
Yeah.
Not what you should pray.
Right.
Like not these specific words. And I get it. When Jesus says something, like it's really easy to just, I'm going to just say what he said.
Right.
Like verbatim, because that's safe. It's like, but I think, Jesus invited us to something more than safe or more than, like, he's inviting us to something that's deep and meaningful and help us to reframe our approach as we engage in communication with God.
No, I think that's beautiful because, I mean, think about this. Think about the times that, and we all have to be honest about this. Think about the times there are words that have come about in prayer because we heard somebody else praying that way.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And so we end up reciting or repeating what we heard somebody else say because we're like, hey, that sounded pretty good.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
That was pretty powerful. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. because that again is a way of learning how to pray. But at the same time, to Josh's point too, of like God's given us a voice, and God wants to hear our voice, and it's not the same for. It doesn't have to be this blanket thing for everybody that we can come before God. But I think what's so phenomenal about what Jesus does is he actually helps us with the first half of this prayer to just begin to see God differently. So I think that's really kind of where we want to go today, is talking about this idea of seeing God differently. Obviously, we've all kind of come off celebrating last weekend being Father's Day weekend. And I think it pretty fascinating that Jesus starts out this prayer with our Father.
Man.
This idea of recognizing God as Father.
It's good.
Can we unpack that a little bit? And just, I know everybody's experience is different depending on who your father or depending, I think, when I think through it, I know that like for some people that have been around church for a long time, it just sounds natural to them. Okay, yeah, God is Father. But I think for others, man, it's a really hard go, honestly. Even when I'm talking with people and having one-on-one conversations with them, hearing about family backgrounds, the view of father or what fathering is, or just the expectation of fatherhood, or just what it means to, you know what I'm saying, feel like you have a connection with your father, and then trying to see God in that way. It's almost like people will recognize him as God, but to recognize him as Father, I mean, come on, man. Like that's it's a stretch for some people. And I think it's a legitimate struggle in our life of following Jesus, to get our mind around the concept that he is actually a father who actually has good intentions towards you. A father who actually loves you. A father who doesn't leave you. A father who only knows how to be present. You know what I mean? So in your interactions with your prayer life and interactions and following Jesus, has it ever been a struggle to figure out, God as Father, or approaching God as a father, or seeing God as a father?
For up until about maybe 5 years ago, that was the single biggest struggle with me engaging in a relationship with God. Because that language didn't sit right with me because of my own experience with my father. The beauty is right now, today, as we sit here and have this conversation, my dad and I talk fairly regularly. We have a reconciled relationship, which I'm extremely grateful for. But that took years of pain and years of questions and years of confusion that built in me a lot of insecurity and resentment and just struggle. When I start hearing God as Father, I'm like, I just can't relate to that. I can't put my mind around that image, and I have a hard time relating in that way.
When you talk about image, like did it change your or like kind of like distort your view of God, or is the only view of God what you had experienced through your father?
So I knew that God wasn't like my dad. I knew he was, my dad was far from God in those years of my life. And I knew that God was transcendent. And I intuitively knew these realities about God as being love, but I didn't know how to receive love from a father.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
So and I didn't know how to seek wisdom from a father.
Yeah.
I didn't have that experience. My dad never taught me how to do anything.
Yeah.
Not to catch a ball, not to ride a bike, not to swim, none of those things.
Yeah.
Not to change a oil or nothing like that,
Right.
I didn't learn those things from my dad. I learned those things from other people's fathers.
Sure.
Which is the beauty of the church and then the family that God gives you.
Right.
The family of God is that like God takes all of that pain and hurt, and he provides you an opportunity to grow and heal and learn things that you didn't receive in your family of origin. But that's a conversation for another day. But so it was just, I couldn't make the connection of God like that and going to God for certain things.
Sure.
Because I didn't have a healthy framework. And it wasn't that I saw God as not being those things, as I didn't see myself as a son.
Right.
My story is, I lost my mom when I was young as well. So being a son was never really an identity that I embraced.
Right. You feel like you had to grow up quick.
Until I became a father. And I'm like, that's what that feels like.
Right.
That's what this should have been. You know what I'm saying? So holding my son for the first time, I'm like, that's the way a father loves.
Right. Right.
oh, I can get on board with this.
Sure.
You
No,
know?
that's beautiful.
And I can
man.
see myself the way I see him. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was those experiences, and then being able to reconcile with my dad helped me to begin to realize these ideas of grace and compassion and reconciliation and restoration.
Yeah.
And like in real time and in real ways to see that happen and to be in pursuit of those things, like that helped my heart to heal and to grow.
Yeah.
So yeah, me and God, as I began to now see that I can go to him with the expectation that I'm a son, with the understanding that I'm a son, understanding that he's a father, and that he is good. And not that I ever thought he was bad, I just didn't know how to approach a man with those questions.
No, that makes sense, man.
You know?
I mean, and I appreciate you being honest and sharing that. You know what I mean? I know talking about upbringing and family of origin isn't always easy.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's the beauty of being a part of the family of God, that we can be transparent and vulnerable with each other, that we've all had different experiences. And I think the experience that you had probably resonates with others in our community of faith of similar upbringings, that it feels like, I think our culture has a genuine fear or trauma that comes with abandonment.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that I've never met anybody that doesn't want closeness to a parent.
Yep.
Whether that be a mom or a father. But I'd say specifically there's something in us that desires that connection with a father.
Yeah.
I know, I want to hear from you, Josh, too, because I know that, you got different experiences and perspectives as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's never been too hard to view God as a father. But I think understanding the fullness of what that meant was something that was yet to be revealed. Obviously, as I spent further time in the scriptures and tried to gain better revelation of God's design for prayer, and particularly our place in this sonship, in the last couple of years of my life, I've kind of devoted more of my attention towards embracing the spirit of adoption that Paul talks about in Romans 8, and what does that bring of our spirit? Like what happens within us? Mm-hmm. And I think for my younger years, that was more left out, not because anyone modeled fatherhood poorly to me, but more like me choosing to just not live fully. More, it could have been because of lethargy or choosing other things or having idols in my life and just other things that I thought tasted better than what it meant to be fathered by God, and in such a way that it could heal all of the brokenness that I'm conscious or neither unconscious of. And so my dad was wonderful, not necessarily in a provisional sense, because Troy and I have similar upbringings in terms of, struggle really. And a lot of people maybe wouldn't expect that of me, but I grew up really, really rough, and it was tough a lot of years of my life. But the one thing my dad always modeled for me was just the true ethics of what it meant to be a father and humility. And I didn't realize some of that stuff till later on in my life. And so probably now, as an actual man, an adult, like now I'm realizing a lot of the beautiful aspects about my dad are found in my heavenly Father too. And so though my dad, left me no funds, no money, he did do the intangible things. And honestly, some of that made it easier to find more of an embrace in God's fathering nature.
Right.
And so, but I think for me, fatherhood in the heavenly sense felt almost this ethereal, beyond me experience that maybe fatherhood means something else. And in one sense it does. But the closeness and the intimacy is something we recognize, but yet at the same time, it's like no other.
Sure.
So it's both and. It's one, it's recognizable in the sense that, at least some of us, we've experienced what it feels like to be by our earthly fathers, embraced and loved and cared for. But the love of the Father, it just transcends, it's exponential comparatively. And so once I got a hold of that, I think I managed to lean into the beauty of what this passage in Matthew 6 is really inviting us into.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, it probably wasn't until I was an adult that I realized
Sure.
what sonship really meant.
Well, I think the
So-
hard part too is like you have to kind of be able to remove some of the false ideas.
Yeah.
I think some of even the cultural constructs, and to be willing to come before God in a way where you do allow Him to love you, and you actually you receive that love regardless of what your experience has been.
Yeah.
Right.
And that you, as you receive that love, you also begin to develop a trust in Him.
Yeah.
That, okay, that He is good. He does have good intentions for me. That I can be okay in this relationship. I think, you know, I grew up in a sense where it feels almost like the opposite, where like I watched my dad be just this really incredible dad, but he wasn't just an incredible dad to me and my brother. He was an incredible dad to, I feel like, our whole neighborhood. And so my dad was the baseball coach, you know what I mean? The soccer coach. He was kind of the neighborhood dad where it's like all my friends and buddies, they would always open up their home to come over to our house, you know what I mean? And we're always taking my friends places with us as if they were a part of the family. And what I started picking up on very quickly was a lot of my friends that I had close relationship with were all pretty much being, you know, raised in a non-typical family environment where dad was often just MIA from the start. Yeah. Not present, or had recently left, and they were trying to pick up the pieces on like what does that mean? Yeah. And to see them come over and to see my dad just care for them and love them. And to this day, people still that I may have lost contact with over time, they still call my dad. And they refer to him as a dad. He was a father figure in their life, and I watch all that, and then I become a dad, you know, and I'm thinking like, there's no way I'm gonna live up to like I'm not that dude. You know what I mean?
You've done a really good
you know
job,
what I mean?
man.
And so I'm trying to like figure
job.
that. I appreciate you, man. You know, but I'm trying to figure that out. You know, I'm like, okay, that was different. What I saw in him definitely was like a godly type love. Yeah. But then I struggled for a long time with like, can I be that same thing? You know what I mean? But then it's like allowing myself to be loved by God, even as much as my dad loved and as much as he is a great dad, there's so much more to experience in the love of the Father, even, that I'm just like, wow, like it's even more rich than I anticipated, you know, when I allow God to fully love me. And I can see that because he was able to experience the love of God in his life, that's the overflow. That's what he was giving out of. Yeah. And like I said, when we look at us as people, we all have that innate desire. So I have 3 kids. You have 3 kids now, right? Yeah. And it's like, for me, I've noticed that when my kids were young, I would show up at the house and it was like, you know, like to the door, like everybody, like, you know what I'm saying? They're jumping on dad because we want time with the Father. They just want to experience the love of the Father. Now, as they've gotten older and they've creeped into adulthood, you know, I come home and there's nobody running to the door. You know what I'm saying? Like there's you know, if anything, I'll get a head nod here or there.
That's Micah.
Every now and again, I'll get a hello. Most of the time, I'm hanging out on the couch by myself and they're in their rooms. You know what I mean? But every now and again, they'll come and they'll sit with me on the couch. Yeah. Or every now and again, they'll text me. Or every now and again. And it's like, no matter how old they get, there's still that desire to connect with the Father. So I think that exists in us when it comes to prayer. And I love that Jesus points that out. He's a Father who desires to connect with us. He knows and sees the desire that we have to be connected with the Father. And then so he reminds us that he's our Father who is actually close.
Yeah, when you were talking about that Sunday, and I was kind of chewing on that, and like it just blows my mind how precise that invitation was to that particular audience, because the majority of their prayers would have started, blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe. Yep. Right? And then they would fill in the blank.
Which puts God way out
there, right? It's like, you know, it's just this idea, like all their prayers would start with this phrase, and it's like, blessed are you, God, which is, you know, like Lord God, King of the universe. So it was never, you know, it was always Adonai, it was always Elohim, right? And then it's like, you're the King of the universe, you're the King of everything. Like, I'm going to bless you. And then they would go. But he says, start this way, our Father in heaven, which is crazy business. Like, like he takes them from out in the skies and brings them into your home.
Yeah.
Which is like, they would have been like, yo, that's.
Which is like an oxymoron, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so it's like, it's a beautiful scandal. Yeah. Right? There's the beauty. There's the beauty of like desperately wanting to know that God is as close as the air that I breathe, that he's up against, like he's close as my skin. But it's also scandalous because it's like, I don't want to take the Lord's name
God
in vain.
is that close.
I don't want to disrespect or dishonor the holiness and righteousness of God. And so that would have been like, this is how you've been praying? You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
my father?
You're over here talking to God as a father, saying Abba?
That's the
like,
king, bro.
Yeah.
That's not even just like father of the nation.
Right.
Fine. He goes, no, Abba. Like, that's my daddy. Like, that's the guy I run to when the door opens. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's who God is. Which for majority of Jewish men at the time, that would have been like, that's crazy business.
That's wild.
Like, that's crazy business. Like, for, I know for me, I'm like, to think of God as the guy who, when the door opens, I run to him. I can see King of the Universe. I get that.
Right.
I'm on board with the King of the Universe,
for sure.
bro. You know what I'm saying? Like
He doing universe things, I'm doing my thing.
My hair like wool, skin like brass. You know what I'm saying? Eyes of fire. I'm like, that's my guy. Like, that's and I need you to ride at dawn.
Right.
But the Father that's in the home, that's providing, that's protecting, that's teaching, that's guiding, that's comforting. You know what I'm saying? The things that I get to do as a dad, I'm like, to think of my Heavenly Father like that.
It's wild.
Like, that changes the whole paradigm of prayer.
Yeah. Which is why I think it's interesting when he says he's our Father, that he's close, and that also he immediately kind of starts leaning into this is about you.
Yeah.
This is about your will. So this idea of prayer being not something that we can just receive and get from God, but that we just get God. That we just get to be. What has been your guys' experience in trying to lead with this framework of prayer in your life? Are you finding that to be true of God, that he's close? And are you finding that to be true, that like your time spent with God, just in his presence, being with the Father, seems to be greater than, or a driving force at the very least, than all the requests and needs that you feel that you have in your life?
Yeah. In these days, the time with the Father is paramount for me. I do ask for things at times, but is often, God, this is what's on my heart, but I want to align with your will.
Right.
Like, most of the time, honestly, like, I take a breath, I sit on the couch, and I'm like, here I am. You know, like, I could just sit here and just be. Like, I'm learning to be. Yeah. Coming from someone who has had to do for a long time. At least I've told myself, and the narrative that I inherited told me I had to do a lot to survive and to make it.
Or to be accepted, to be approved.
Yeah, now I'm like, just be.
Yeah.
Just be with the Father.
Right.
Like, just sit down, spend time. Like, yeah, I care, like, and this idea, like, yeah, he cares about the things that I care about. But then there's also, do I care about the things that he cares about?
That part.
You know, he cares about what I care about, but do I care about what he cares about? And am I willing, again, to submit my will to not just his, but to submit my will to be his?
And I think that's huge when it comes to prayer, because many of us, I think, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, have been taught, well, I just come to God with everything, which he does invite us to come and to cast all of our cares. And he wants to hear our request. He wants to know what we need. You don't have because you don't ask. Like, we read scriptures like that, ask, seek, and knock. Like, there's all this idea of asking and seeking God. But oftentimes we allow prayer to become this thing where we're just asking for everything that we want. So we want the things and not the actual giver of the things. And I love that. That's what you're saying, that you're learning. There's this almost like Jesus flips the script and says, and you're asking and all about what you want. Do you care about the things that God wants? Do you actually want to be with him enough to understand his heart and understand who he is and understand the ways that he is working in you so that you are actually living this out? I mean, such a powerful kind of flip of the script, right? You know?
Yeah. I think for me, it's, I mean, especially as of late, I'm learning to fall in love with God's presence in a very fresh way. I've always been a guy, I think, within the realm of worship, have had a high value for the reality and the manifest presence of God. But I think the way that I've always framed that, maybe more often than not, has been centered around powerful encounters in a corporate sense in his presence, where whether we're environments in a worship gathering or in a space, and then almost trying to emulate that sort of same thing in my private time, in my secret place with him, which is fine and well and good too. But I think, yes, recently I have found my communion with God to be so much more rich, because much of the things that I engage with him, and as I pray our Father, and as I center it, the Lord's Prayer is a Christ-centric, kingdom-minded approach to prayer. It's a great, not only is it a great prayer to pray, but it sets a precedent for how we approach God and how we approach his throne.
Yeah.
And I think as I've delved into the depths of that and what that informs of my asking and my seeking, I've just found my communion with God to be so rich and not something that I can never go without. Unfortunately, it's made me get up early, and I'm coming to this realization in my life that I'm actually not a morning person, which is an enormous epiphany as of late. And it's been a
Welcome to the club, bro.
It's pretty wild
Yeah.
realization. But as someone who is like just struggled with so much depression and so much sadness and so much anxiety in my life, what I'm realizing more is that I've always enjoyed the blessing of getting up early and what that does for me, but less the actual aspect of getting up early and being a morning person.
Right.
Because I think there's some idea that we have in our mind. And so I've had to really faithfully reorient my life in this way to not centered around like, oh, I love being a morning person, I love getting up early. I've had to center around, I love being in God's presence.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
if I don't do this right now, I will not do it. And I will not find myself later on in the day. So
I think that's beautiful. That's a beautiful realization. But I also think it's also, again, it highlights the significance of prayer. That, like, I think one of the things that we're taught is you got to get up early in the morning, like Troy mentioned, and now you've mentioned, and we seek God. And I think, that is true for people that automatically rise early or they have to get up because they're getting ready for work. I do think there's a way that we can incorporate prayer as we're going. There are some people that they just automatically wake up in the morning and they're just wide awake. Mm-hmm. I know that's not the case for me. I wake up in the morning somewhat early, but I'm not wide awake. I'm not my best self. I'm not alert to the Lord. And so for me to think that I can just engage prayer, I struggle with bringing tiredness and like not being fully present and awake with God.
Definitely.
Right? So I feel like I got to give myself a little bit of time before I come before God. But that's the beauty of prayer, is that it's not one set time.
Yeah.
In fact, when we talk about things like praying throughout the scripture or what Jesus was inviting him to through this idea of the Lord's Prayer, these prayers were prayed oftentimes 3 to 4 times a day. They were morning, noon, night, sometimes early afternoon prayers.
Do something
as you
back
go
in.
Exactly.
Definitely.
As you're coming into your home, as you're leaving your home, as you're being mindful that if we take this as truth, that he's our Father, that he's with us everywhere, that he's as close as the air that we breathe, then we have this idea of everyday dialogue, consistent communication with God where it's accessible. You know what I'm saying? I'm able to communicate as I go. I'm able to communicate on my lunch break. I'm able to communicate, before I put my kids down for the night, or whatever that might be. That the same significance that we have in the morning sometimes can be as equally as rich and powerful in the late afternoon or evening. You know what I mean?
Even like I like the idea you mentioned on Sunday. Like often we begin with this formal introduction. Dear God, and I think like we tend to think of prayer as formal and not formative.
Correct.
And if we think of prayer as formal and not formative, then we feel like we have to set an appointment.
Sure. To kind of highlight or talk about from this, because I know there's something else that we want to talk about that's also going on Wednesday as well. So
I think we covered just a good majority of the way that we engage in that conversation. Obviously, the Lord's Prayer, like the graphic that you had used on Sunday of just like, hey, we tend to approach God and prayer this way, and this is what it does. It builds our kingdom. We stay in these tense relationships. We avoid conflict resolution. We want to build our own kingdom. All of those things. I'm like, man, that's an incredible, just practical, tangible way to see how certain approaches maybe lead us far away from what God wants us to have.
Sure.
And then to see how Jesus helps us to reframe that through the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And to begin to reorient just the entirety of ourselves and the way that we approach communication with God. And it becomes a lot more life-giving than some of these frameworks that we inherited. Unlearning, I'm on a journey of unlearning just as I'm on a journey of learning. Unlearning, because I still sometimes will beat myself up or, like, oh, I didn't do that for 45 minutes or an hour. I didn't have this emotional response during that time. And I'm like, I don't know that that's necessarily what God is inviting me to. Those things are, if they happen, they happen.
Sure.
And that's great. But there's, again, like I was engaging in conversation with somebody in my family about prayer specifically. And I was like, man, a lot of what we've been taught is just noisy.
Sure.
Like, and
spiritual calisthenics.
Man, it's just noisy and loud and busy. And I don't see that modeled in Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest thing for me to say.
Or in those who are following him throughout the scriptures.
Don't see it. Yeah. You don't see it. It's very intentional. It's very simple. But that doesn't mean it's not powerful and effective.
Correct.
Slowed down, very quiet. And like the authority that Jesus displays is not yelling at the top of his lungs. It's a simple, I have authority, so I'm going to say this.
Correct.
And things will fall into place.
Yeah. It's the non-anxious presence of
Jesus.
Which
the more I spend time with God and approach him in that way, the more I begin to see character and formation in me.
Absolutely.
And hopefully that those are closest to me begin to experience me differently than the loud, busy, anxious, tense, angry, contending Troy that has existed for the majority of my life.
Yeah.
That is now unbecoming as I'm trying to become. I'm not even trying. I'm learning to become something different as I spend time with God.
I love that. Appreciate that, man. Josh, anything else you want to say as you encourage somebody to continue to lean into this ongoing everyday dialogue with Jesus?
Yeah, I think consistency is key. I think what we're talking about a little bit is this idea of praying without ceasing and recognizing that God is present with me in all moments, and my awareness of his presence is increasing daily in my life, which therein fuels an understanding of his presence and his witness with me, yet at the same time would also encourage that no different than with our spouses, if the only time that if we ever encountered one another and when we talked is passing by, then we would have very shallow.
Only if you needed something.
Only if you needed something.
It's not good.
And then the reality is the level of our intimacy would be very, very low.
Right.
And that would go for anybody. Intimacy is cultivated through time. Mm-hmm. Time is the currency to intimacy. It's not, for those of us who are married, it's not greater craving sexual desire. All those things can be an aspect of what is considered health and wholeness. But at the end of the day, this currency that we have is time, because time is formative for us. And so in one sense, yes, like we're saying, may I be more conscious of God's presence dwelling. His freedom is indispensable. He is willing and available. He's omniscient. God doesn't give parts of himself in X amount of places. And there is no appointment that needs to be made with God. He is not preoccupied with someone else's situation, which therein reveals the magnitude and the greatness of who he is, but also how he sees us and how that defines our sonship. Yet at the same time, that intentional opportunity, be it in the morning, be it in the evening, be it in the afternoon, of just closeness and friendship and communion with God is paramount, I think, in our apprenticeship and devotion to Jesus. And so,
Appreciate that, man. Those are good words.
Yeah.
So much more we get to talk about as we continue to process everyday dialogue, taking things beyond Sunday and continuing to lean into this life of prayer. So thank you guys for sharing about what you're learning and what you're processing. I think in terms of learning as a church, before we head out, we would be remiss to not draw attention to something significant that we want to help you to better understand. We talk about all the time being a multi-ethnic church and a multi-generational church. And today is a significant day in the history of our world, our culture, in that today is what's known as Juneteenth. Which was officially established on June 19th, 1865. And so that would be 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. General Gordon Granger, he read aloud Order Number 3 that states that all slaves are now free. And that day was a special day. It signaled the good news that freedom had finally come. That even in advance of the proclamation being signed, word to those that were enslaved, it took a while to get to them. But once that word came, you can imagine the joy and the celebration of what that meant for them. And so I feel like we have to intentionally be reminded as we call attention to the fact of what we're celebrating for Juneteenth today is the reality that we're not far removed from that day and moment. No, that when you really retrace history, I think we're about 159 years from that significant moment. And I'll be real with you, like 158 years is not a lot of time.
It's not that long.
And while we can look at our culture and environment and say, hey, you know what? I think we made some great strides. I think in terms of understanding people for who they are and justice and equality, I think we have made some great next steps in even relationships of race and differences. But I think we also are often reminded every single day that the work is not done and there's still so much more that needs to be done. There's still much more to do. And so I think we're trying to help City Line understand that regardless of your cultural heritage today, whether Juneteenth has been something significant to you in your life or not, I think what you can't do is you cannot separate today from your spiritual heritage.
No.
Regardless of your cultural heritage. That the themes that we're highlighting today are uniquely woven in throughout the gospel, that we recognize and honor everyone as an image bearer of Jesus Christ, and that God is a God of freedom. He's a God of justice, that we stand together with everyone from Moses to Isaiah to the Apostle Paul to those that led civil rights movements and Dr. King, and even the good news that by the power of Jesus Christ, he's torn down the dividing wall and barriers that separated us, that now we are united as a family of God. And I love that Jesus, to inaugurate his ministry, he calls back to the prophet Isaiah, where he says that the Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom to the prisoners, recovery of sight to the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. The year of that Lord's favor, we are still living in that. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And so I guess my thoughts and encouragement is that may City Line continue to be a people of the good news, a people of the gospel, a people who understands the significance of what Jesus has done, or what Paul says in Ephesians, that we are one family, we are one church, because there is one Spirit and there is one Lord. And I don't know. I know I'm gonna get excited to start preaching, so I don't want to take I don't want to take the mustard away from you, Pastor Troy. So would you share something about that?
I just love that in this prayer that Jesus provides us a framework for. He makes a very significant statement. He goes, "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And make no mistake about it, liberty, justice, honor, respect, those are kingdom realities, and the kingdom is now, but it's not yet. Right? And we get to do the beautiful, arduous work of bringing that kingdom reality everywhere we go, and making an impact. And so we get to celebrate the freedom and we get to celebrate the progress. We get to celebrate the growth, but we hold hope and hurt hand in hand because we realize that while, yes, we've made significant progress, there's still so much work to be done, and that's kingdom work.
Yeah.
This isn't any political thing. This isn't a government thing. This isn't any trend or any social media thing. This is kingdom work because God has always been a God of freedom. He's always been a God of liberation. He's always been a God that wants to bring those who have been oppressed and set aside in and bring them near and allow them to experience the fullness of the reality of what it means to be close to him and to bear his image. And so we get to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most beautiful things as the people of God is we get to partner with God in bringing the new creation reality here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, when we're in a new heaven and new earth, we get to look and say, I put that beam up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
It's our call, it's our heritage,
Like,
it's our work, it's who we are.
We get to do this.
Yes.
And we get to bring truth and justice and love, to seek justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly, right?
Walk
that is
humbly.
what like, and we get to do that. We get to live that out and embody it. And what I love about, City Line Church is that we're a multi-generational, multicultural, redeemed community.
Yeah.
It means you have people from all walks of life that come together with Jesus as the main thing.
Yeah.
And we get to be in real relationship with one another.
Yep.
And so we get to pause and celebrate and honor all that God is doing. Juneteenth gives us an opportunity to recognize what God has already been up to.
Yep.
And the work that he's inviting us to continue.
Yeah, to continue to partner together with God in his mission to see this one family, every nation, every tribe, every tongue, celebrating together about the glory of God around his throne. I know, it's exciting, man. Fired up. Fired up. I mean, you got me fired up. I mean, I thought I was preaching, but you like,
well, only
you
God
took it to
can
the next
do
level.
It. Yeah.
I know. It made me remember. I forgot about this app that I had.
You got an app?
This app, yeah. Because when you were preaching, I was like, hold up. I was like, Troy, like, say it again.
It's a kingdom reality that has now come here on earth, and we get to partner with God in the good that he is already doing right here, right now, here on earth, just as it is in heaven. Dude, only God can do it.
This app is wild, bro.
Is that the Praise Break app? What is that?
Praise Break app. Like, it's like. But here's a cool thing. So like it's like, you and your church can pray. You know, you got those if your church does not know how to worship the Lord effectively, and if your church just stands still during worship, guess what? You and your church too can praise. And then it's like, gives you like the praise track. Here we go. Now you and your church can come alive in the Spirit as they shout around the building, glorifying God. Lift your hands and lift your voice, because it is praise play. Let's go. Hey, hey, hey. And 1, 2, and stop.
That was good.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, right back to it.
We're done.
Well, hey, guys, I just want to say thank you once again for tuning in to the Beyond Sunday podcast. We love you, and we thank God for you. And so until next time, don't let what you just saw sway you or hinder you in any way. Just, we do love Jesus, and I did find this app, and it's one of my favorites. And so we love you guys. We can't wait to be with you again soon. Until then, God bless. We'll see you guys later. That was fun. Hey, praise break. There's something to it.
For dry, stale praise.
The dry eyes guy.
For dry, stale praise.